When you want to think about indie spirit, it's a lot about just taking a leap of faith and saying, I want to make this thing so badly and I don't think anyone else will really play it, but hey, I want to do it anyways.
Indie is a mindset. It is an approach to making games that is about being personal and being honest and being genuine and making something that you stand for, that is a reflection of yourself.
I want the games that I make to feel like they could have only come from me.
I came to games as I want to make weird art stuff, and I can do a bit of everything. Marrying the fact that I want to draw and that I want to animate and that I want to do sound design and that I want to program and that I want to write. Games brings all that together. It was like coming home when I found gaming.
You have small teams that are working out of passion, who want to make this thing a reality. You don't have investors breathing down your back. You can do something that is a bit odd, quirky, incredibly niche, and still get a name for yourself and make a career out of this.
I'd say indie game developers are misfits. They would way rather take a risk and possible fame and glory at trying something new for the very first time.
We really say tender personal things and confess our life experience in the form of a game and be heard on those terms.
There's a lot more in games than shooting people in the face. There's a huge world of games that isn't shooting people in the face. And so indie games let us explore that world and give people access to that world.
The large companies, they're just putting out the same games, and while that's wonderful in its own way, there's a kind of tiredness to that experience. You know, at a certain point you're like, I want a different flavor of gameplay.
What are you doing today, Davey? Oh boy, I got a lot. Yeah, I know you do. What I'm compelled to do is clean up. I'm really compelled to just move it from point A to point B. Whose power drill is this? That's mine. Okay, could this... Yeah, we could change that location to it. Take the location of it currently, and then leave everything else the same except that. Okay. Thanks, buddy.
I think I was just walking through the halls in my house and just asking what would a narrator say about this, right? And so all I did was I imagined a scenario where you came to two open doors and the narrator said, and then the player went through the door on their left.
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left.
And then the player went through the door on their left, right? And I tried to make sense out of that. I tried really hard to understand, because it didn't make sense. It was he said it in past tense, something about it just didn't click together. It didn't make sense. And because it didn't make sense, that was how I knew that I should explore it more.
Aha, perhaps you misunderstood. Stanley walked through the red door. I still don't think we're communicating properly. Stanley walked through the red door.
So the Stanley Parable is a game about the relationship between a game's player and the design of the game. It presents the player with certain options, certain things that you're able to do, and then sort of reflects on the nature of, did those choices actually mean anything? What impact did those really have?
Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley would meet his violent death.
Whenever someone says that video games are a form of escape, I think they were when I was 12, When I was 12, I wanted to play games to just blot out the world. I just loved having something there. I loved to have something that responded to me. Donkey Kong and Mario, all of the classic Nintendo oeuvre. Because I was the master of those worlds. I was the king there. because there I got to decide how it was going to go. No one got to tell me that you have to go here and do this at this time. I mean, like, once I left home and went off to college and no one was telling me to do those things anymore, I became a lot less interested in those games. And the games that I found myself far more interested in were games that took things away from me, you know, and that made me weak and that forced me to have to deal with that. If I can go to a game and the game can kind of push me and go like, hey, there's something about the world you hadn't thought about before, you know, like I come away from that and I go out into the world and I'm stronger because I had to deal with a difficult scenario inside of a little virtual environment.
Thank God when people play this, they'll say, those sound like real phone rings.
It matters, Davey.
Is that too fast? That felt too fast.
No, play it again.
The core Stanley Parable development team is 2 people. It's me and William, and we only Skype, right? We've never met in person.
I primarily make the level geometry, and I also help Davey out with a tiny bit of the writing. This is my first kind of proper game developing experience.
Ooh, yay. Oh, it's so weird. Wait, so, oh my God, this is gonna freak people out. Yes, I love it.
The fact that I'm working with another person now is like, that's a pretty significant part of it. Like, that I have just a day-to-day collaborator that like every single day I can talk to someone, show them what I've been working on, say like, is this good, is this bad, what do you think? It's just a way to get outside of my head. I am terrified every single day of my life about the fact that people think I have any idea what I'm doing, you know? It's like, do you know what I do?
Yeah, that sounds awful, doesn't it? I studied film at NYU, and I went into NYU thinking I'm going to be a director of movies, and soon found I was not very good at that, and decided I want to be a sound designer of movies, and that went really well. But it was at the end of my career as an undergraduate that I discovered, oh, video games are doing, in my opinion, much more interesting things than film was. You only have one shot, right? You know, you only live once, and I wanted to be in a field where I had a chance to be at the beginning of something exciting. Man, working in independent games right now is just, it feels like there's infinite potential in any direction, and you can try something completely wacky and there's an audience for it. About a year and a half ago, I started kind of developing this bizarre idea for a game called Sound Self. And I began just thinking, oh, I'll take a few years to make this, I'll learn how to program, it'll be a tiny little project. And then the Oculus Rift was announced, and suddenly I realized I could do something way cooler with this project than I initially could with the existing technology at the time. Found a programmer and launched a Kickstarter. Somehow got a bunch of people to support the project, and it's a really weird project. It's really weird. I can't even explain it, and I've been working on this thing for a year, and I don't have an elevator pitch for it. Here, let me try it. Sound Self is a game, but it's not really a game. Sound Self is an experience where you chant, and in chanting, the game captures your voice, and it dances with you, and it gets you into a trance state. It's just you chant with this thing, it lasts about an hour, it goes through an arc, and then it ends. And, I mean, it's a really powerful experience. It's just difficult to describe. I am so proud of how well this thing creates that expansive sense of self in a way that you would otherwise need a long time training on meditation or a large dose of hallucinogens to experience. I consider myself to be part of two really important creative communities. There's the indie game development scene, and then there's the kind of local flow arts hippie community here, which bring me to things like Burning Man and various flow arts festivals. A lot of my ideas, for Sound Self in particular, come from experiences and conversations with the hippie community. And the way that I implement that, the way that I create something new, comes from ideas I have by talking to the technologically brilliant people I know in the independent game scene. We use this space for parties. And it's not only game developers who come to these parties, it's a lot of people who are just local and love video games. And then over here we have like a little arcade with 4 Xbox 360 controllers so that people can play multiplayer games. Like we play a lot of Samurai Gun here, which I kick ass at.
Almost all creatures play in some way, shape, or form. It is inherently, intrinsically good and positive. Play is just satisfying in a way that most other activities aren't, and play teaches us. It's how we learn, it's how we grow. It is when we are most engaged, and when we're engaged, our minds are open to new things, they're much more flexible. So you see lots of play in children, and you also see the highest amount of learning and growth in children.
Spaghetti standoff. Yeah. Spaghetti standoff is a game played by from 5 to however many people, and you just need a box of spaghetti to play. You basically stand in a circle and link hands with spaghetti, and you need to use your body and your head to break other people's spaghettis.
In society, we have divorced play from learning, but actually play is the way we learn. It's how we are naturally predisposed to learn.
And maybe that's the magic ingredient that games provide is consequence is not permanent. You can start over and you can do it again, you can learn.
I think if you don't have time to play and you don't take part in creative, organized or disorganized play, that's not like a downside to your life. That's like a major problem you have to fix. Like it's worth prioritizing. I don't think you can be a well-rounded person without having some aspect of play in your life.
When I tell people I make games, they sort of, oh, those are for kids, or those are evil, those are bad, they ruin my son's life, you know? And I think there's this expectation that you're going to go down this like kind of addicted gaming path. Like when people sit in front of these like very tightly honed neural feedback loops of basically stimulation response. You want to find a way to kind of like seamlessly destroy someone's life, figure out a really good flow pattern with like really fast stimulation reward, because our minds are just wired to love it. And I think that when people see games and they see people like, that's what they dislike. They dislike that kind of removal from space. But I think a whole new kind of games are emerging that allow you to kind of enter into physical spaces and play in physical spaces and like unlock that in really passionate and engaging ways that are really, really positive.
Set flex vector cage to 1. Wormhole flip. Set the ultra alarm to 3 when we get up to this. Swallow your pride. Engage phase field. Asteroid. Everybody shake.
What's interesting about now in indie is it kind of mirrors a period in the 80s where bedroom coders were making the big hit games. This was a time where you could make games in your bedroom. It wasn't easy, it required incredible technical skill, but games were not made by massive teams. And it meant it was massively open to everyone.
I had an old black and white Timex Sinclair ZX81 when I was a kid, and I just remember being so fascinated by programming. It was one of these things where you could sit there alone with this little box and a TV screen, and you could literally create anything you could imagine, you could create.
In the early 80s to mid 80s, we really did have an indie hobbyist scene, and great people could just on their own start companies and just have things take off. Bill Budge is probably the most famous of those, who did Raster Blaster and Pinball Construction Set on the Apple II initially. He and his sister are getting the discs manufactured, putting them in baggies. They'd have a title card on the front, in front of the disc on the baggie, and those would then be sold in computer stores, tacked up on pegboards.
So there was huge money being made back then because there weren't that many people that knew how to code because it was really difficult to learn how to do it because there weren't really many books.
But a lot of the game types came out of this era, like, you know, what were adventures, you know, what were shoot 'em ups, you know, what were platform games.
In the late 80s, things changed. A console war between Nintendo and Sega started pushing a drive for more graphically complex games, for bigger budgets, for larger team sizes, and that slowly made it impossible for indies to compete. And the indie scene started to dry up.
We saw this massive growth in the quality of games, the money being spent on them, and just the technology in general, the visuals on the screen. That was developers trying to race each other to make better and better looking games. You know, genres that did very well financially were focused on. And then once they'd been focused on, specific mechanics were kind of honed into this sharp point of exactly what we know sells.
And back then, you had to have a publisher. You needed a lot of money up front because you needed to burn discs, you needed to make boxes, you needed to ship boxes. Walmart was like the #1 distributor, and Walmart has a rule that you need to be able to ship 10,000 units to any store in the US within 24 hours or something based on their inventory system. That kind of distribution network requires a lot of money up front.
With the coming of things like the PlayStation 3, with its downloadable features, then the Xbox also had a downloadable service, all of a sudden you have this opportunity, in fact you have this mandate to make smaller games because they had to be downloadable, so they had to be smaller, right? And everything starts to change.
Initially, it was Steam that kind of changed everything. There were digital distributors before that, but they were small, didn't have a massive audience. And suddenly there was this whole new way of delivering games to people.
Steam is basically the iTunes of PC and Mac games. Millions of people around the world purchase games on Steam.
The biggest factor was actually not only Steam, but really Apple. iOS opened up the App Store, and that kind of changed everything because it allowed people to push their very small games, very small visions. iOS was kind of the lightning bolt for everybody because it was so mainstream and it's so like, hey, here you go, here's a platform for absolutely everybody.
But distribution's the big difference now in the fact that there is the internet. So now everybody can make a game and put their game out, you know, and that just makes it more competitive.
So about 10 years ago, in the mid-2000s, tools became readily available for game developers, like Unity, GameMaker, XNA, that were now completely accessible to independent game developers. So you only really needed a small team of developers as opposed to a whole army of developers to make a game.
It's so easy. And I know Construct 2 is pretty simple. Hell, I can do it, so, you know, just drag and drop it. It's taught me a lot about the process of, you know, the logic behind games and what makes them tick.
There's like Scratch, there's Stencil, Unity, GameMaker,
RPG Maker, Twine.
Because of all the elements that have fallen into place, like tools, distribution, games culture, there's now this huge community of indies. And they've changed the industry forever.
So I started playing games at a really young age. The first time I ever played a game was when my dad got his first computer I remember that I would have to put in one floppy disk with the operating system and then another one with the files that we wanted to use. The engineer that installed that computer had refused to remove the option that allowed me to go to the DOS prompt, which was just the old recognizable C semicolon thing. And one day I just went there because I was a curious 6-year-old, and I found QBasic, which was a programming language, and then within QBasic there was a file called Gorillas, and that was a game about 2 gorillas throwing explosive bananas at each other. But me and my brother loved that game, and every time we'd boot up the game, I would see the code, and then one day I got curious and sort of scrolled around it and figured out that you can change letters there, and then the game is different. That was essentially when I understood that I could make things. That was the first moment in life where I realized that, wow, if I change things in the text, then this game changes along with it.
When you die, you walk around without a head for 5 seconds, so you can still pick up health packs. Like, Chicken is kind of a Rambo-ish character, with like a bandana, super hardcore action stuff.
And Vlambeer, yeah, they're 2 guys who didn't necessarily like each other that much, but they respected each other's opinions about game development. And they approached us, and they said, we want to drop out of school, and we want to start with you guys. They are a very unique combination of design talent and business talent. Part of the success of Vlambeer is they're really deeply integrated into the worldwide indie scene and very respected.
It's like, me and JW don't really agree about anything except for bad science fiction. That's the one thing we seem to agree on. So basically we took every possible trope from bad science fiction books and movies and put them into a game. I travel to events all around the world to get the word out about our games, and there are a lot of events around the year. You've got the Penny Arcade Expo, or PAX for short. You've got Fantastic Arcade, which is also a little movie festival in Austin. You've got Game City out there in Nottingham, and you've got GDC, which is the Game Developers Conference, which also hosts the IGF Awards. The IGFs are sort of the Nobel Prize of the games industry. It's the biggest prize you can win as an independent game developer. It's not a typical way of working, I think. We are in many ways opposites. Yeah, you just said it's like hell?
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have a lot of interests that overlap. Games we like are different. Movies we like are different. That works, having 2 opposites, because if we agree about something, if there is something that we don't disagree about, then it's likely to be good. So we just sort of keep arguing until we agree about something. And sometimes that takes pretty extreme forms. We once had a 3-day-long argument about the shape of clouds.
The game feel can be completely different. Like, all those little communication things can be done in different ways. Like in Dinosaur Zookeeper, you program this ugly thing where the text shakes when the numbers go up.
Oh yeah.
That's horrible.
I liked it.
But you're not the game designer, so...
You're not the interface designer.
You're not on that project, and it shows.
There is this debate about whether games should be fun. And I think games should be entertaining, is my definition of it. Fun is one route to entertainment.
If something is interesting, it's fun. It is.
But what if you're horribly depressed?
What if you're playing Spelunky and you just keep dying over and over and over and over? Is that fun?
Spelunky is a fun
you
game.
think it's fun, right?
Spelunky is like a fun game.
Because you're mastering.
Yeah.
So you think it's fun. Other people might say this game is frustrating as hell,
But
and I
that
don't want
Dragon
to touch
Cancer
it
isn't a fun game. But it's still super interesting and compelling.
Glad it exists.
Our game is called That Dragon Cancer. My wife and I have 4 sons, and my 3rd son, Joel, has been fighting terminal cancer for the last almost 4 years. And so this game is the story of him. In the demo that we created, it's a night I spent in the hospital with my son when he was on palliative treatment for terminal cancer, and he was dehydrated, you know? And I got to share, like, my innermost thoughts of that experience in that night and put it into something I could share with people.
He won't stop crying. I don't blame him. He feels miserable.
When you're told that your son is gonna die, that there's like this immediate like temptation to kind of pull back, to like kind of close yourself off because you don't want to experience that level of pain. You know, like, do I get to know my son in a deeper way? He's 2 years old. Like, do I get to know him or do I pull back? And to me, like what I want to share with people is that it's worth it to go all in.
Yeah, I know.
Why can't Joel?
Well, Joel got sick right after he turned 1. And,
Kind of slowed him down a little bit, buddy.
You know, I think we're kind of still in our infancy on what game experiences can be. Because in many ways, like, you know, fighting cancer, it's kind of weird to say, but like fighting cancer is kind of a game. You know, it's like a game in our life where we're trying to find just the right formula to save our life, you know, to save my son's life. And that's a mechanic. And so like when you start seeing the world through the lens of what are mechanics and you know, and what happens when mechanics fail, like I think you see the potential of what games can be.
And I am holding him firmly, trying not to slip. Because if you hold tight enough, nothing will take him. Right?
Cart Life's another really good example of interactivity, sort of enlightening the player to this social issue, like with someone who's working a low-income job, like at a newspaper stand or whatever, you know, having to do these repetitive tasks over and over, and then having to manage the little money that you have. That's something that some people will only ever experience in a game.
Like some of the negative press that I've got about the game was that it was guilty of like class tourism, you know? It's like a portrayal of an aspect of society that I'm foreign to, and I'm trying to romanticize the plight of people who are, like, they have it tougher than me. Like, I don't feel bad about laughing in their faces when they say that, because when I made it, everybody that I knew was broke, including me. Like, nobody could pay rent.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Like Butter here, and today we're gonna be playing Cart Life. Cart Life. For me, I show you Cart Life. This is a indie game that
Sometimes
just
people, they want to spend their lives recording themselves playing a game, and then they upload that to YouTube in the form of something called Let's Play. So there's Let's Play Cart Life all over the place. It's awesome. I love it. I'm a big narcissist, so I like watching people play my games and hearing their thoughts. And what's funny is they always start off with this really like ridicule is number one.
I don't know how to say these names. He's talking to a cat, dude.
As they start the game, it's, wow, what the hell is this? This is really sad. This is like the most boring and depressing game ever made. Wow, how ridiculous.
What the?
And then as they play it, the levity kind of dampens a bit, and they start to play the game on its own terms, and they really undertake the game in a sincere way. And then they stop speaking in the third person, and they start speaking in the first person. Instead of saying, he needs to go to the courthouse to get his permit, it's, oh, I forgot to get salt at the grocery store, and I gotta pick up my daughter at school. I'm a bad mom, or I'm a good mom. Like, I'm glad Laura forgave me. And it's in the first person, and they feel as though these things are really at stake in their own lives, and there's kind of a switch. That's magic to me.
People want to make things, and I find this all the time. People come up to me and say, hey, I want to make stuff. Where do I start?
Anybody can be an indie developer. I go to high schools and tell kids, you can start coding tonight. You have a computer at home, you can start programming. You can start learning how to program right now and make a game.
Just go for it, just make games. That's the real advice for how to get started in indie game development, is just make things.
Okay, hi everybody. Hey, pay attention to me for a minute. Me. So this is Train Jam. Yay! So the theme of the Game Jam
Jam is a bunch of developers coming together to make a game. There's a timer set, and you've got to make a game. You team up with usually people you haven't collaborated with before, and you've got to make a game generally based on a theme within 48 hours or 12 hours or whatever it may be.
Train Jam is a game jam on a train from Chicago to San Francisco. It's a 52-hour train ride, and it's going to get us into San Francisco right before GDC. We're getting there for the Game Developers Conference, which is basically the largest professional game developers conference in the US, possibly the world. But it's a large gathering of game developers all sort of going there to network and watch talks and see other sort of like professional viewpoints of things. So at this point, I'm going to leave you all to sort of brainstorm how you're going to make a game with the theme disconnected. Disconnected. All right, so go brainstorm.
You can make an indie game with just one person, which I've done. But the usual team is usually a programmer and an artist together.
That would be the core usually.
That's usually the core, and you also need a sound guy.
The key thing is that you have someone that makes the logic and someone who makes the art and someone who makes the sound. And sometimes that is one person.
I'm primarily on music, he is primarily on programming, he is primarily on art, and you are primarily on system design.
We kind of all knew what our strengths were. Basically, I'm an artist, and Devin's a programmer, and Alan wanted to do music.
The basic idea was, guy has a shield, he can glide, he can bash, or he can throw it, and he has to retrieve it if he throws it. Since the theme was disconnected, we decided the game would be Disconnect Ted, and Ted is just trying to disconnect himself from like everything, social media and the internet, just because, you know, he doesn't want it to control his life. So it's gonna be like a puzzle platformer with combat, where he's like fighting aspects of social media, like maybe he'll be fighting like internet cookies because he wants to delete his internet history or stuff like that.
Because we do want this guy to look realistic, right? Like
that is the placeholder,
I was
right?
thinking a very like motherboard, circuit board kind of thing.
Yeah.
We came around to the fact that actually games where you pilot ships and shoot broadsides are kind of our classics. So if you get two of these, you can row. So each player has got one.
But I didn't want it to be boats because boats are boring. So I thought that maybe they could be monsters because I like drawing monsters.
You haven't mentioned the title yet.
Ah, yeah, it's called Monsterbation. Well, there's a bunch of monsters shooting at each other.
Do they look like offsprings?
It's adorable, yes.
Fantastic Arcade is an independent video game curation that is a subset of Fantastic Fest. Fantastic Fest is the largest genre film festival in America. Fantastic Fest has its own flavor of the films that it programs, and we kind of try and tap into that same feeling of what makes a movie a Fantastic Fest movie, sort of similarly like what makes a game a Fantastic Arcade game. And it's not really how indie they are or how obscure they are, it's that they're doing something new and exciting that people can connect with that maybe aren't into AAA games, you know? It's not a traditional gaming event. It's in the middle of a giant film festival. So a huge portion of the people that are playing their games are people who are not traditional gamers. So it's a chance to cross over, meet people that are in other creative disciplines, and meet people who are passionate about culture and media, and connect with them and get them to be game fans, which is, you know, a lot of people don't realize that there's a game out there for them, and there totally is.
Green is starting to look pretty sharp here.
Then getting killed, but now he has 3 new bullets.
And the first bullet decides the match. Yes, Issa, you won.
Issa clearly advancing to the next round. It's kind of an event for the people who make games to relax. We encourage them to just hang out and drink and have fun.
So a while ago, somebody asked me where my home was, and I explained to them that I don't really have a home. I technically have a place in the Netherlands, but I'm barely ever there. And they asked me, so isn't just home where your laptop is? And that was, because it's true. I mean, my home is wherever my laptop is and where I'm connected with the internet, because that's where I can get in touch with my friends, and that's where I can do my work. I mean, it's a weird thing to realize that my friends live all over the world, and I only see them a few weeks a year at best. For some of my friends, I see them 3 or 4 days a year, and they're my closest friends. They're the people that I talk to a lot on the internet, but I don't see them often.
Please come back tomorrow.
That might be hard, but I will see you.
What country are you in tomorrow?
England.
We're hanging out in England, right?
For Nottingham.
Yeah.
Yes. I still need to figure out where I'm staying in Los Angeles. Good. I'm gonna see you in a week.
I'll see you at PAX Backstage.
I love you, buddy. Okay, man. Thanks for everything.
No, thank you.
We'll see.
Good luck with no. The launch is happening after IndyCar.
Just after IndyCar, yeah.
Cool. Oh, see you in a week, dude.
All good. Bye, Ryan. Bye.
Game City is another one of these little friendly game festivals, and I'm trying to take every opportunity I can to come to an event like this and show Sound Self, because my whole strategy for getting the game out there is putting it in front of people and getting people talking about it. What's cool about Game City is it's a festival that's not serving the industry, it's serving people, not even necessarily gamers. Game City really tries to reach out to people who don't necessarily play a lot of video games, and showing people how accessible games can be and how games fit into culture as a whole. We might have made a mistake in setting it up as a multiplayer game here, because it requires you to be a little louder. I think the English, more so than the Americans, certainly feel quite guarded. And so I've had a few people come in and, oh, this is interesting, and then walk off, you know? I'm not gonna say, no, you're doing it wrong, just relax. Because, you know, it just wouldn't be the proper way to represent America.
Art is about making people look at things. And the artistic process is a process of looking at things and trying to evoke that experience of looking at this thing, what you felt, what you saw, and trying to make other people see the same thing. And then sort of that changes your vision as a spectator to then go back into the world and see the world differently. We're Tale of Tales. We're in Ghent, in Belgium, where we live and work together. We started making games because we stopped making websites. That was in 2002, more or less, that we made the decision. We had been making net art.
What kind of happened was, at the time when we were trying to think what are we going to do next, because we didn't know where we should go, and then suddenly we just looked at the games we were playing and we were like, hey, this is interactive, this is art, this is what we've been making all along, why don't we make a PlayStation game or a console game?
We felt quite hostile in the beginning, actually, towards games, and because we found so much interesting stuff in them, but they kept making the same mistakes, in our opinion.
We were playing all these games, we're like, why is it always like this? There's always this battle thing and, you know, randomly generated battles. What's up with that? Or why is there only like car racing, fighting, you know, shooting, you know, these different very simple verbs? Like, why is it always just that?
Assassin's Creed, beautiful city, you know, amazing landscape, soundscape, everything, and then people call that eye candy or something. I find that the most interesting part of that game. The combat is stupid, the story is silly, the characters are kind of like, huh? But this creation of this world is amazing, so we try to point that out, that those are the interesting parts of video games, and a video game that does just that is perfect.
It was odd to come into a situation where all we could see was all this possibility and potential to do all kinds of things, and be told, no, you can't sell that. You can't make that and put it on the PlayStation. We can't help you with that, you know, because what is this? Is it Tomb Raider meets The Sims? Is it Myst meets, you know, Grand Theft Auto? I don't know. So we sort of came to our decision that we would try and change that. And we met with a lot of resistance to not only the things we were making, but the things we were saying about games.
Because what attracted us first in interactive medium as an artist was very much that intimate relationship between the work of art and the player or spectator. There's no definite goal that we want to reach necessarily. It's more like we create this environment and then we put people in it, and then we want to see how these people respond to that environment, because that, you know, we're curious and as artists sort of basically looking for truth to some extent, and it's only when other people interact with it and then they vocalize what kind of truth that they found in it, and all these different interpretations and ideas that come out of this interaction. That's fascinating to us. I mean, that's sort of why we do it, I think.
We love the games like our children, you know, like just really want to see this thing exist. And it's the most important thing in the world when you're working on something for that long. It has to exist, it has to be playable. That character that you've been making live in that world that you've been making live for a player, is just not gonna exist because no one else is gonna make this. That becomes like so essential that you can't dream of not finishing.
The games that we're going to be creating is for today, going to have one main character and a collectible. Okay, so you're going to be able to move that character around and collect things. So for instance, your dog collects bones, scuba diver collects fish, for instance, or shark eats fish, maybe. Kids Learning Code is a non-for-profit organization that we started about a year ago to help kids feel confident using technology and also aid in the exploration of them developing creative skills and also problem-solving skills. The muffin would be perfect for a collectible thing for you guys. A donut. Part of the reason why we started Kids Learning Code was this need for kids to actually be builders instead of just consumers. Our main objective is to get kids understanding how things work, taking apart hardware or software even, and actually trying to dissect how these things function and why it's so important that they exist.
I absolutely love the idea that kids now are able to learn to code so at very early grades, because it's going to become natural for them. I always like to talk about how elevators, if you go back 100 years, well, you couldn't get in an elevator and just go. There was an elevator operator. An elevator was much too dangerous and complex for people to just operate themselves. And then it got to where, well, there's an interface here, but people were afraid of just pushing a button to go in an elevator and do it themselves. You and I don't go into an elevator and look at it and say, oh, look, there's an interface. Let's see, how does this interface work? Oh, we just walk out and we press the damn button. Because interfaces of one generation become the intuition of later generations.
You know, if you're a kid and you want to learn how to code or game, you know, or create games, this is the time. You know, there's almost an infinite sea of resources for you to go and join a community of people.
I think that a lot of kids are going to find that
You don't have to be like this nerdy sort of stereotype. You can actually be like a very artsy, creative person, but also enjoy being on a computer. You can use your imagination in new kinds of ways, so you don't have to just mess with Legos. Like, you can actually go online or like on your computer and build an entire world just by typing.
I'm furious at them because it was so hard back when I was a kid. But it's also amazing because, like, I mean, to me, it's almost kids today are a different species. Like, they don't know what it was like not to have the internet.
So who has heard of the if statement in computer programming before? A couple of you? Artash, do you want to try to explain what an if statement is?
Like, if the sky is blue, the water's going to be blue?
That's a great example. That's a great example. So in our current state, what we want to say is, if my arrow key is pressed, then move my character in that exact direction. So we're going to have 4 different if statements. One for the right arrow key, the left arrow key, the up, and then the down.
You know what we should do? We should do like letters, and then it would spell out a word. Oh yeah. It would be like dogs are awesome. Okay, so what should it be? The dog page.
Arcade Expo, or PAX, is one of the larger consumer-facing events in the world. PAX is very much a community event, right? It's for the gamers. PAX is where large companies go to show their games, so getting floor space to show your game there is really, really expensive and really, really complicated.
The Indie Mega Booth is a booth. Started at PAX, and it's basically the biggest booth there is now at PAX, and it's just packed with the best indie games and the best indie developers from around the world.
Long press.
The whole idea is so that we can dominate a space at PAX and have the same noise and the same presence as the big AAA publishers do when they come and they buy out their hundreds of square meters of space.
When your number is displayed, please enter the demonstration room. Thank you, and have a pleasant demonstration.
I made a demo for PAX designed specifically around this particular PAX and this particular Indie Mega Booth. So like literally this one weekend, we're gonna show this thing and then never show it again. And I think that a big part of why I wanted to do that is because so often the experience of being at a trade show like PAX is one of being locked into your little demo space. And I wanted to create something communal, something where you looked around you and said, oh, I'm experiencing this demo here at PAX with these people around me.
I like coming to these conferences and hugging people and talking about the people that have shaped their lives. You know, that's what's special, and I think that's what makes it worth coming to these things, even if you don't have something to sell and you're not taking Steam pre-orders and you're not, you know, like having a call to action on your marketing materials.
I would like to spend all of my working time working on SoundSoft, but I don't get to do that because if at the end of the year, when I ship SoundSoft, nobody's known about it, I have no one to blame but myself. So the successful, and by successful I mean the games, the independent games I've seen that a lot of people know about and a lot of people play, those are games made by people who spent tremendous effort getting the word out there.
I think that's also like one of those things that people have to understand is that even though they're making stuff, it's like it's going to be a lot harder to get themselves seen because it's hard. There's so many people that are flooding the scene. You just have to become this all-dancing marketing machine if you really want to make a lot of money. Not a lot of money, just any money to live to make your next project.
We screwed ourselves over by not focusing on marketing. Honestly, we were so focused on development and just getting the game out already that I just pushed marketing aside. I had to for my own sanity. I put it on Facebook and Twitter like, hey, my game's online, play it, y'all. But nothing happened. There was no fanfare, there was no parade, and I knew there wasn't gonna be.
You guys like board games? This guy here, have you heard of Armello?
Armello is, imagine Game of Thrones meets Kung Fu Panda, but as a digital board game. It's super important to us to get overseas, even though it's incredibly hard being from Melbourne, Australia.
It's one of the biggest mistakes that we've made. It's like thinking that we wouldn't have a build that would be ready to show, and then knowing, like realizing really late in the piece that we did have like heaps to show and that people would be super stoked to see it, and you know, the press would love it. It was just, that was devastating, and knowing that we'd missed out on space. So the original plan was just hardcore guerrilla marketing. It was like, we didn't have a booth, so I just came, I've got my bag, and I just have a build in it on the PC and then on my iPad. Armello, so like A-R-M-E-L-L-O.
It's hard to promote yourself. A lot of indies, especially me, get imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is the feeling that you are not worthy and you don't deserve what you're doing, and that it's not of your own volition, that it's just external forces doing nice things for you.
I'm really bad at it. I get very modest. I get shy, which is like, obviously not very good for self-promotion. I'd much rather just get someone help with marketing just so I can get back to, you know, getting back to telling stories, because that's the part that I'm good at.
Hey, Eric.
Yes, what can I do for you?
Do you have extra space on the booth today?
We have space in that booth,
What
but you have
booth?
to claim a table.
There's a booth over there? Like, is it you guys?
Yeah, Microsoft gave it to us.
Oh, wow. Hey, I just claimed this area
I've
here.
been here for half an hour.
Half hour? Oh, sorry, dude, I didn't realize. All right. Oh, cool, I apologize.
All right.
All right, we'll have to make it work with something else. I might try grab that that wide table over there or something. We found an empty booth that we were going to crash and sneakily show our game there, but then this space came available and we just jumped in and quickly slapped together a stand, and now we're here. We got some printing done, had the guys go run out, get some posters printed, so we got one on either side. We bought a monitor, which we can't even take home, but it's showing the video and reeling people in. We've had some people here playing it and everything, and now we just send the word out on Twitter. I'm about to hit up some press via email and everything, let them know that we're here and we're showing the game, and yeah, that's what we're doing. This booth actually wouldn't happen if we weren't in the Mega Booth last year and didn't make relationships with them, because Microsoft gave this space to the Mega Booth peeps, and we heard about it and they were like, hey, jump in if you want some space, because Kelly knew we were looking for space. And so it's super important, and that's why League of Geeks invests so much, and we personally invest so much of our money in getting out here.
Being able to show your game early is an extremely valuable thing, and it's something that I think we learned the hard way. So we were working on this iOS game, Ridiculous Fishing, and we had already sort of made that game in a really early version, one of those 2-day prototypes that we often release, and that was Radical Fishing. And somebody had seen Radical Fishing and decided that that was a really good game idea, so they decided to just completely copy it, just the whole thing. About a week before their game came out, they released their trailer. And slowly it started to dawn on me that we were going to be second with our game idea. And the cloners earned a whole lot of money. I mean, it was devastating. It was completely, we were not capable of doing anything for the better half of a year. I think what we learned is being open and transparent and showing people that you're working on something is not only good for preventing clones from happening, because now if a clone does happen, at least people know to be outraged. It's also a really good form of marketing.
I would imagine by now everybody has had sort of a first pass at their prototype, have done some play testing and have sort of moved on to the refining and polishing stage. That's if they're like super duper on track. I know a few people have restarted a few times or tweaked things here and there, so they're probably a little further behind. So it's been going well. Everybody seems to be having a really, really good time.
I actually had made his legs a little bit smaller than the rest of his body, just for the art style. Oh my God. I don't get it.
Looks great.
No, he doesn't. And he doesn't even need the ground to jump. I'm deleting him and starting over completely.
When you're really excited about doing something, you'll do it, all the time. And so even when we started it, every 2 months a game came out, bam, bam, and we're making brand new stuff people hadn't seen, even after making games for a decade.
With making a game, it's really iteration, so it's going back into it and adding stuff. So to make Thomas Was Alone was, okay, make a screen, okay, make a rectangle on that screen, okay, make that rectangle full, make that rectangle full, and then if I press left or right, it moves left or right along the screen. Make that rectangle full, and if it's on ground, make it, if I press this button, that it jumps. And you just slowly but surely put in all these different bits of logic, these kind of little instructions to the computer, and slowly but surely a game emerges.
This is a simple, basic control demo. It's got acceleration and deceleration. You can jump. He jumps a little higher if you hold the jump button down. If you're at the top of your jump and you're still holding the jump button, he uses the shield to glide. And you can hold the button to take the shield out.
If you've never programmed before, doing really simple things feels pretty magical. Like just getting it sounds dumb, but if you just get a number to count from 1 to 20, it feels like, oh, like I made that happen, like I did that. That was like a piece of magic that I did. And then it just goes from there. If you can make a box move around on a screen for the arrow keys, it just feels good to do that. After that, you add another box, and then you're chasing boxes around or making boxes look like rain.
Designing Stanley Parable was a design of limitations. It was, even this very simple tool set, I only know how to do like 2 things. I know how to make hallways and I know how to put voice in.
You see, the line knows where the story is. It's over in this direction. Onward, Stanley, to destiny.
And literally that was it. And I very simple tools.
Every once in a while, we kind of like to check in with each other, see what everyone's doing. We're all working in 3 different areas. I'm working on the audio right now.
Sound makes it believable, makes it part of this world. Our world is filled with sound. The way we make a visual come alive is giving some of that realness to it through sound.
We're very visual thinkers, humans are, which means that when you see something, you're used to kind of consciously analyzing that. But with sound, you can get away with a lot that the player won't notice, and that will dramatically change the mental state they bring to the experience.
I don't really have much of a sound library. I'm not much of a sound person. But there's a person in the cafe off the train who's been making all these announcements that are peppered with really cool sound effects. So I figured I'd just ask, especially since he's got a cool train whistle.
I need a bit of everything, if you don't mind.
All aboard!
Thank you so much, you're my hero!
Do you think maybe we should just have the elevator doors open on first playthrough?
No, I'm just giving him the elevator textures.
Yeah.
I went to film school and realized that other people like film more than I do. Film was kind of like a logical choice. Well, that seems acceptable. Seems like something that people do. And then I just went and I realized it wasn't what I wanted to do. And which was good. Most of my formal education, 90% of my formal education was learning what I don't want to do. And one of the things that just passed muster and that I totally still felt really excited about was trying to make video games. I want to work on something I don't understand. You know, I want to make stuff that I don't even know what it is. As soon as you stepped outside of like the convention, then it was just like desert for days and days with nothing, no idea where the end on the opposite side was. And that was all I needed.
Okay, so I don't know what's going on here, but the button model in Boss's elevator in map 2 still has that portal texture on it.
2 days ago, we released the Stanley Parable demo. The demo is a completely separate piece of content that, with no actual content from the main game, that's meant to like help explain the tone and the style of the Stanley Parable without actually spoiling any of it.
At this time, please take a minute to think about all of the mistakes you've made in playing this demonstration, as well as your lack of respect for demo taking in general. Wonderful. I could really feel the introspection on my end.
People have like really liked it, and it's actually been it's been really emotional.
Davey, I love you so much. Gosh darn character limits. I'm looking so much forward to this, so much anticipate. So wow. Finally, I quit my day job. Now I earn decent money online. You should try too.
There's all these people, you know, I go online and there's like hundreds or thousands of people writing to me or about the game or about something that I've done. I feel this obligation now, you know, I feel this responsibility to deliver on what those people expect from us based on like the precedent we've set with this demo.
And it's a really hard market to make money on. For every one success, there's probably literally hundreds of games that underperform and the developer has to get a day job or they get discouraged and do something else.
You have to really love this if you're going into indie game development, because you're probably going to, maybe if you're lucky, make enough to survive. And if you really have a hit, maybe you could survive for a bit longer.
The main game launches in 5 days, and now it's real, right? Like now I can't ignore it anymore, and I'm not able to just like keep going the way I was before. I'm like freaked out now.
So we're here today to talk about what we're going to do for the project for the analog port. So just to get started, you know, if you don't mind telling me, what is the elevator pitch for analog itself?
It is a really long elevator ride. But you know, the premise is you discover this long-lost generation ship that's been derelict in space for centuries, and with the help of a pair of spunky AI sidekicks, you go through the log files, diary entries of its long-dead crew, trying to solve the mystery of what happens to the ship. You can also just say cute girls in space, Korean patriarchy in space.
I have to admit, I do usually want to just be like, it has Korean space cuties and just leave it at that, but then everyone would be like,
I just started off doing prose fiction, like novels was what I wrote. Then I started branching off into just, you know, I discovered visual novels, and I thought that's a pretty cool thing to play around with. I discovered that Japanese visual novels have everything that novels have, but they also like marry that with visuals and the emotional power of having music, and really draws you in with interactivity. So I just started playing with that, and the next thing I know, people are telling me I'm a game designer. So I decided, what the heck, I'll run with it. Fundamentally, I'm interested in telling stories in games. I think has the potential to be such an amazing way of telling stories. And I want to keep pushing that, you know, finding out what more we can do with it. My games are about empathy and trying to understand people, so I feel like anyone can get that out of that. Whether, you know, you're a straight male or you're some 13-year-old lesbian who's hoping for some representation in games, I feel that's what's most important to me. Just trying to get people to think about things from other perspectives. I was just really interested in Korean history. It was something that I was studying randomly, and I got to reading about how women in the Chosen dynasty were treated, and like I couldn't imagine living in that era. It just sounded like so horrific that I couldn't even comprehend what it would be like living there. The Chosen dynasty was brutally oppressive. It was a very stratified society. Women didn't have any rights to speak of. You were to raise children, you were to provide sons. That was your value to society. A woman would not be considered important enough to be included on the family register. Your name would be forgotten. You were just a burden. I was personally interested in how real women did actually survive this era. How did they do that? So Analog was a project that I set out to make just to explore that. I wanted to answer the question for myself. So Analog is a mystery visual novel game where you discover a generation ship derelict in space for centuries, and by talking to the AIs on board, you go through logs and diary entries and other primary documents about the people who used to live there, and you try to find out what happened to society on this ship. I wanted to, rather than focus on judging history, I wanted to show that this is a possible future, that this is something that can happen if we don't pay enough attention. And I wanted people to focus on trying to imagine what it would be like if they lived in a society like that. And at the same time, I'm making this game about misogyny, and I'm coming from a visual novel background. And let me tell you, if there's if there's a genre that's full of misogyny, it's definitely visual novels. Making it be about Chosen Dynasty sexism at the same time that it's about our own just felt like totally appropriate for me. Like, there's a lot of people who don't really realize that there's anything necessarily queer about digital or analog or hate plus, and I think that's sort of a failing on my part, but at the same time, I think it just goes to show that you can make games that are designed for queer women, and they can still have broad appeal. Like, yes, you can pander to me. It's okay. It won't offend the straight people. I checked.
Depression Quest is an interactive semi-fiction game. We wanted to actually show the ugly realities of the day-to-day toll that depression has on people's lives when they live with it. So we present the player with a reasonable scenario that might occur in your life, like you are invited out to a party, what do you do? And then we provide them with a list of options. And the first option is always like, go out and have fun with your friends, and that's crossed off. So as the player gets lower and lower in depression, we start crossing off more of the options. And because it's one thing to watch, and it's another thing to be forced to make choices yourself. And more importantly for Depression Quest, to not be able to make choices. You know, you're giving people these rules to play by, and then you're sort of saying, no, you can't. There's this huge stigma against ever needing help and ever having a mental health issue. And a lot of things couch that in like 50 layers of metaphor. But I mean, I look at something that, you know, tries to use metaphor to describe depression, and I'm just like, this doesn't show how ugly this is. I made Depression Quest because I had to. I was not doing very well at the time. The Depression Quest trailer actually made the day I lost my job in this room, actually, and I just put the camera on for like 15 seconds and laid in bed and stared at a wall. I really just needed to get it out of my head and put it somewhere else because it felt like my brain was cannibalizing itself. And I needed to reach out, and I needed someone to understand. And maybe if someone else was there too, I wanted them to know they weren't alone.
Hi, I'm Zoe Quinn, and I'm an independent game developer. I made a game called Depression Quest, which at one point enraged a certain subset of the internet enough to send death threats to my house and leak my phone number. I know that harassment is a tough subject, and it's not one that
Like, growing up as a woman, you're told all the time that you can't do that this isn't a thing that's for you. The more visible that you are as a minority in games, the more intense stuff gets for you. Because it's like they want you to stop. Like, they want to silence you. I originally took my game off Greenlight the first time because somebody sent a detailed rape threat to my house.
think a lot of people are used to what a game is supposed to be. And when they see someone who is doing something completely different, their first reaction is just like, I hate this person and I hate what they made and they shouldn't be here, they shouldn't be on the internet, they shouldn't be making games.
Once I started experiencing sort of like verbal abuse on the internet and people being like, oh, you're just someone's girlfriend who makes games, like after I experienced that, I realized that it's like a real issue and that if no one steps up and speaks out about it, then nothing's gonna change. So that sort of motivated me to like teach myself how to program, get really serious about making games, and like go out there and try and make that change myself.
I've faced like harassment, I've faced like physical assault and stalking and that sort of thing from things in the game space. God, do I want to say that? Yeah, like I'm gonna say it because it's important, and I think like once you do start speaking out about it, other people that have been so afraid of bringing up the difficult subjects and talking about these things, anytime I have taken that chance, and like sort of put myself out there when I know like you get shouted down so quickly and people are like, oh, don't rock the boat, you know, don't, it just sounds like you're complaining, it's not happening, or it's not real, or you're just doing it for attention. It's like, it's so hard to deal with abuse in this industry sometimes because it's like the first thing that that so many people want to do is just to say it's not real and say it doesn't happen, or say it's an isolated incident, but then you see them saying it's an isolated incident like 20 times, right? And I look over at my phone that I had to change the number of to get these people to stop calling me and being disgusting, right? And being told that that's not real, that that's not happening. I think of any of the women and young girls I've taught game design having to go through this, and I can't deal with that. You know, I have to fight for them, you know?
The internet community is one that kind of needs our help to be better, safer, and less hostile. And if we can do this, it will just be 1,000 times better for the new indies that are coming in behind us. Instead of not feeding the trolls, let's instead feed each other, ourselves, and our communities. Thank you.
Okay, the website is all ready to go.
Oh yes, our price has been approved.
4 years and 4 months I've been working on this. I don't know if I'm ready for it. I'm really kind of tired, you know, I'm tired of thinking too much about it. I'm tired of wondering what it'll be. We're 24 minutes from lunch.
Feel out a bit sick, worry.
Yeah, me too. Oh my God. What if something is wrong?
The emotion of this process of birthing this thing is like, it's not stressful, it's all consuming. Something is gonna happen, you know, something or other. Maybe even if it's nothing, right? Even if just there's zero response to it, that's still something, you know? And
the game is out. It's 10 minutes ahead of where we were supposed to be, but
It's out right now? I can buy it now.
coming soon. Oh my God, it's there. Oh my God. Stanley Parable. Oh my God. 20% off. It's $12 right now. It's normally $15, but it's $12 right now. Stanley Parable is available to buy right now.
There's no guarantee that you're going to make it. It's a lot of hard work. No tools are going to make this easy. No tools are going to make it easy for you to make something that people actually want.
Every day, hundreds of games are submitted, and then they sit there and languish, just like ours. And I don't think that the cream necessarily rises to the top. There are plenty of incredible games with beautiful graphics, innovative mechanics that just don't gain traction.
Oh, here we go. New releases, Stanley Parable.
New releases.
Right on top of Pacific Surfliner, LA, San Diego. Dude, this is so exciting.
Oh my god, wait, I think it's up on Rock, Paper, Shotgun.
It is.
Oh my god, oh my god.
Oh my god. Spoiler-free review.
Oh my god. Oh, this is amazing. Oh my god. Okay, Rock, Paper, Shotgun did the review as like a branching review that you can like click on various links to access different parts of the review.
We're already number 6 on Steam. Wow. Wow, that's very good, I think.
Davey,
No, I'm not gonna check.
Davey,
Yeah.
Davey.
Yeah.
The Striptoid just gave us a 10 out of 10.
What?
Thousands of people have worked harder than me and done better work and haven't nearly received the kind of critical acclaim that Stanley's got. And it's so weird. It's like, I don't deserve this, really.
Everybody come in, get your things set up, and I'm gonna go around with everybody. Yeah. Alright, hey everybody! Congratulations everyone for making a game!
It's a game where you play as a dejected monk. It's sort of like a speedrun game. So you glide and then you end up in these sort of temples where you have to kill everybody.
We made a 2D puzzle platformer called Disconnect Head.
I made a game about going around to different games conferences and the craziness that is accompanied with it and being sort of disconnected from reality.
We ended up making a game about monsters kind of squirting substances at each other.
We're just gonna let everybody play all the games. Who wants to play everybody's games?
Seeing people play the game is just the best thing. It's great from an ego perspective of just seeing people having fun with something you made, but kind of more importantly with an ongoing project is you get feedback. You know, you see where they go wrong, you see what they're not liking, you see what they are liking and that you should build on.
We didn't get something about any kind of user interfaces.
You got your stats, you got like your money.
Every year, we gather at GDC to celebrate the best that was made that year. I mean, the Independent Games Festival Award is a peer award. It's an award handed to developers by other developers. So having your game nominated at the IGF is an amazing validation of the relevance of your work in this industry.
We're at the Independent Games Pavilion, which is located in the middle of the Game Developers Conference Expo. We're here because we were nominated for a Nuovo Award in the Independent Games Festival.
The name means lust and pride. It's Latin. Those are 2 of the 7 deadly sins. So a correlation with the fun of games and the pleasure of sensual activities. And we wanted to explore that similarity in a game. The game itself is very abstract flower. You touch the flower, there's colors that appear, and that means that the flower is enjoying what you do to it. Men tend to approach the game in sort of like fast functional way, sort of like tapping or moving things. And the game is sort of set up against that. The game wants you to be a little bit more relaxed, to be a bit more slow, to take it in, to massage it a bit more. So as a result, women tend to be better at it, because, you know, I don't know why.
And it's a nice honor to be nominated for something. Yeah, we haven't won yet. We haven't won. So, but I think this is our 4th game that's been nominated in Nuovo.
Independent Games Festival is a festival here as a part of GDC every year that is specifically just to recognize games made without a publisher, games made by small teams that otherwise would not be recognized in big awards ceremonies like the GDC awards themselves.
We kind of had a figure that if we made this much money, we'd be okay and we could continue making games. And we kind of made 5 times that amount in one day. And now we felt like overjoyed the first day, and then the second day it all became very kind of strange and weird, and it's just been kind of deal with it, don't make any crazy spending decisions, Ferraris and...
Sure, people look at Minecraft and maybe they hope they will get rich, but I think most indie game developers probably just want to be able to make games.
I actually think the idea of success is poisonous. I think one shouldn't strive for success at all.
Success for me is being able to make the next game, and you know, being able to pay the rent while I do it.
I just hope that I can get enough money off of this game so that I can work on my other future games. I just want to like lay a foundation for something awesome.
There's 2 of me, one of which one of those is mine.
When the nominations came out, everyone in our studio was nominated for something, and so that was like a big day. It was like everyone, you know, like celebrating. We all went out for drinks, and it was really lovely, and so it's really nice. It has been more than I was ever expecting or anticipating. It's also been tough to deal with times. It's a little like up and down, you know, but the whole overall thing is like really, really good.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 2014 IGF Awards. All right, folks, now for the weird games.
Nuovo Award.
Here are the Nuovo nominees.
Sound Self.
I'm nominated for Sound Self and Nuovo. Nuovo is my favorite award. And it was really awesome. Like, if the IGF, right, is like a celebration of what's sort of weird and unusual, the Nuovo is a celebration of what's really weird. So I was just so thrilled to be nominated for Nuovo.
Luxurious and Ruby.
Just to be with Tale of Tales in that lineup is like, oh, yes, I have such a huge professional crush on Tale of Tales. I have such a huge crush on Tale of Tales anyway. I want to make out with Tale of Tales.
And the Nuovo goes to Luxurious.
Hello, you don't know what kind of shock we're in. I'd like to thank my husband for making this possible.
I'd like to thank my wife for something I didn't want to tell you.
But keep playing, keep making games, and all games should be Nuovo. All indie games should be Nuovo.
Even after, you know, awards and money and number of downloads, number of YouTube hits, number of Twitter followers, we have all these ways of quantifying merit, and I still feel kind of unsatisfied because I can't tell if it's good or not. You know, I feel like I kind of got away with something a little bit. You know what I mean?
We asked the entire internet to vote on their favorite IGF nominated game. After the dust settled and an insane number of votes were counted, one game gets to win this officially sanctioned popularity contest. And the winner of this year's audience award is the Stanley Parable.
Seriously, love, 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 love. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're all on camera.
I love you. I love you very much. Thank you.
I would say indie games aren't doing one
so many different things. And in order to understand that, you just need to play one.
You know, it's funny, I'm a game maker now. And when I tell people that, you know, I'm at the local park, you know, hey, you take photos? What do? You look artistic. I say, I make video games. And there's a certain amount of like, whoa, you make video games and you went to school for that? No, I didn't go to school for that. I just decided to make games.
I just see more and more people that you wouldn't otherwise hear from in games being represented. I think that's so cool.
I want to see games by all sorts of people from every single conceivable background that you can imagine. I want to see more games from developing countries. I want to see more experiences because every single game is unique. Every single game has that fingerprint of who you are on it, and every single person has a game in them.
I feel like there's a space for everyone, and it doesn't really matter where you came from or who you were before. It's if you love games, then there's a spot for you within the indie game scene.
Whether I go, you know, and apply to be a producer somewhere, or if I am able to continue this indie development, it remains to be seen. But I'm a game developer.
Just seeing like pure, genuine emotion when somebody's playing something you've made is kind of the best thing ever.
It's absolutely exciting to me that we have a whole another generation of game designers who are being able to start way ahead of where everyone 20 years ago started. But once they have these skills, then they can create almost anything they want to. You know, it's like holding up a paper airplane and running with it. And the fun part is letting go and seeing where it goes. And who doesn't want to run underneath that plane?